The recording has started. So in the last class, we were from OOP and C++, and we saw how you can organize your program in multiple files. Okay, how you can divide the code in multiple files, and then how you can compile those multiple files together by using your compiler. Okay, you basically have to tell the compiler to compile all the .cpp files. So you can do it either by telling it manually on the command line, or in your IDEs, when you add a new project, a new file to the project, the IDE will automatically include this new file in the compilation process. So with that done, let us come back again to OOP and C++. So let's say I have a class, and that class has a member variable of type integer x. So when I declare an object of that class, let's say I declare 3 objects of this class, then this member variable x, it will be part of all these 3 objects. So my question to you guys is, let's say I declare this class, and let me share my screen with you, and then we can. So my question to you guys is that class with a member variable x, when will memory be assigned to this member variable x? When I declare a non-member variable x inside a function, int x is equal to 30. So we know that whenever that function will be called, memory will be reserved for x, and whenever that line is executed, x equal to 0, 0 will be assigned to that memory in RAM. So as a member variable, when I have a member variable x, int x as a member variable of a class, so when will be memory assigned to this member variable x? Let me log in this. If it's not logging in, let me unshare and see if this logs in without sharing. Give me a minute. Yes, it's not logging in. Let me reboot it. So while it reboots, you guys can try to answer this question. That when is memory assigned to member variable of a class? Can you guys hear me? Hello? Okay, thank you. So when is memory allocated or memory reserved for the member variable of a class? If you guys don't answer, we can't move forward. When is memory assigned or memory reserved for member variable of a class? Let's say during the execution of a program. When an object is created of that type. Very good. Okay, so memory will be reserved when an object will be created of that particular type, and that object will be created usually inside a function. Okay, it could be inside the main, inside another function, or inside the member function of a class. So whenever that function will be called, that object will be created and memory will be reserved for that object. Very good. So let's say I have this class with this memory variable int x, and I make 3 copies of this class. Okay. So how many variables will be created? How many times value will be memory will be reserved for the variable x if I create 3 objects of this class? Very good, 3 times. Okay, because this object and then this variable is part of the class. Okay, so whenever that object of that class is created, all its member variable will be created inside this object. Okay, and every time an object is created, new copies of these member variables will be created for that new object. So, like 3 objects have been created. So again, each of these objects will reserve memory for the variable int x. So these kind of member variables, which are part of the object, and every time a new object is created, a new copy of that variable is also created with that new object. These kind of member variables are called non-static members. So all the variables that we've been declaring until now in our classes, they have been non-static member variables. Similarly, all the functions that we have been declaring inside our classes, they are also non-static member functions. So there's another type of variables that we can create inside our classes, which are called static variables, and similarly static functions. So the difference between these two, or the characteristic of the static member variable, is that static member variable is part of the class, not part of the object. So static variables are associated with the class and not with any one object. Just like this variable int x, created 3 objects A, B, C, then in A there is a copy of x, and B there is a copy of x. But if x was a static member variable, then x is associated with the object. It does not matter how many objects of that class. A static member variable will be created only once. So let us see how does static member variable look like. So let me see if machine has it. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Okay, so this is terminal. Can you guys see the terminal? Can you guys see the terminal and is it okay, good. So by the way, Usman's comment reminds me, we haven't set static variables until now, right? Just to make sure. Have we studied static variables already or no? In class? No? Okay. No, okay. We are in 103, but there was normal static variables inside a function. We haven't set static variables in the context of class. So static variable, we studied in CS 103 that static variable is different from a normal local variable because a local variable is created every time a function is called, and at the end of that function, that local variable is destroyed. But a static variable, if it's declared inside a function, it's different from a local variable in the sense that static variable will be created the first time that function is called, and it will not be destroyed at the end of the function. It will remain in memory. And the first time, it will be reused. So that's how static variables are different from local variables in the sense that their lifetime exist until the end of the function and they do not get destroyed with the function return. But once created, their lifetime exists until the end of the program. And every time that function is called again, this variable will not be created, but rather it will be reused from the first time it was created. Okay, so is it working for other people also? Am I audible and understandable? Okay. Okay. So I think it might be either it might be some problem on my end or some of you yours. On my end, there's no electricity. I mean, I'm connected through this mobile phone hotspot. So I don't know whether the issue is on my side or not. But if it continues and I become like totally ununderstandable, you guys can always interrupt me and ask me to repeat. Okay, I'm happy to repeat anything that I've just said. Okay? So if it's totally understandable, ask me to repeat. Let me type it here in case this message goes through. Okay, so I hope the concept that we studied in CS 103, that is local variables versus static variables here. Okay, so the main difference, as I said, is that the lifetime of the local variable ends with the return from the function, whereas the lifetime of a static variable with return from a function, rather it continues until the end of the program. Okay? And every time this function will be called again, this static variable will not be created again, but rather the old copy that was created the first time, it will be reused. Okay? And that reside in some state. Okay, so that's clear. Let's study static member variables. How do static member variables behave with in terms of a class inside a class? So the static member is associated with the class and not with the object. So with non-static member variables, non-static member variables are created when an object is created and their lifetime depends or is tightly coupled with the lifetime of that object. When that object is destroyed, all its local member variables, all its non-static member variables are also destroyed. Okay, so non-static member variables are associated with the object and their lifetime depends on the lifetime of the object. Whereas a static member variable is associated with the class, it is not associated with one particular object. So it is associated with the class and its lifetime does not depend on lifetime of any object. So static member variables, they are not part of the object. Non-static member variables will have as many copies as there are objects of that class. A static member variables, a static member variable in a class will have only one copy, okay? And that one copy is associated with the class. And if we want, we can access the same this one copy through any object we like. But the static member variable is not part of the object. So let me just try to create a static member variable. So I declare my class A. This is a non-static member variable. If I want to create a static one, I will have to do static int by ln is equal to static int by. So this is my function show, which displays the value of x and y. So static member variables, since they are not associated with any object. So one question arises, which I asked you at the start of this class, that when will memory be allocated for a static member variable? For non-static member variables, you guys replied correctly that this memory will be reserved or allocated for the variable x whenever we create an object of A, of the class A. But the thing is, this static variable, it is not associated with any object. So when will memory be allocated for this static member variable? When will be the variable y created? It will be declared from the start of the program. Declared where? Is this not a declaration? This on what is line number? Declared from the start of the program. Do you mean it will automatically be created from the start of the program? Okay. So here again, we need to revisit these concepts of declaration and definition. As I said, C++ has a one definition rule. So we can declare something as many times as you like, but we can have only one definition for a function or a variable. So inside main, if I declare this variable, let's say 32. So here, I think I told you in the beginning of CS 103 that here, this is a declaration as well as definition. Okay? Declaration as well as definition. So things are allotted memory when they are defined. Okay? So here is the declaration as well as definition. In case of this static member variable, here this is a declaration. If you want to use here, in the case of static variables, we define them. So here we have declared it and we'll define. So what will be the definition of a variable? So definition again, we mentioned definition is basically type, name, and any value if you. So here the type of my variable is int. I have to give the name of the variable. How do I give the name of the variable? Now I could say y is equal to, let's say, 0. Declaring y, no, this variable being declared, a variable y, global variable y. So if you want to define the variable that we have declared as a member of class A, then during giving the variable, we have to say that we define a variable that we have taken. A variable is basically y member of class A. Okay, so in this case, we'll specify as like this. Okay, so this is basically the definition of static member variable. Y is line number 7 and line number definition of the static member variable y. From now on, this member variable will exist. Its memory has been allocated and it will exist and it can be accessed using class A. Okay, yeah, good. We have to define them outside the class. Static int variables have defined zeros in by default. Okay, good. So 0, it's good if they're initialized to 0 by default. But you might want to initialize them to some other value. So you will have to initialize it during the definition. Can you please explain what is happening now? Basically, static member variables, we have to distinguish between their declaration and their definition. Okay? Memory is allocated for member variables when they are defined. Normally, when we define a variable, like we are doing in declaration as well as definition. Okay, so this line number 21. Line number 21, Z is defined as well as declared. Okay. So memory will be allocated whenever we execute this line 21 because it's declaration as well as definition. But for static member variables, we have to distinguish between declaration and definition. Declaration just introduces something in your program to you, and definition is when memory is allocated for that particular variable. So static member variables, we do declaration and definition separately. Okay? So declaration is when we declare that variable static inside the class, line number 7. So this is a declaration of this variable. But to be able to use it, memory should be allocated for this variable. To be able to allocate memory for this variable, we have to define it. So line number 7 is declaration only. So to define and line number 8, defining the state member variable y of class A. Okay. So int the name is resolved a colon y, and then normally like just like any other variable, we can, if you want, we can assign initial value to it. Yeah, the definition is always outside the class. Tell that this variable is part of this class, is member variable of this class. Definition will always be outside the class. There are exceptional cases, but normally it's outside the class. Okay. Exceptional cases like just like, for example, C++ standard allows you that if this integer is constant, then we can declare and define it inside the class. Okay. Not why, let's name it something else. Bye-bye. Just make it something good. Here I can define it as well as initial. Constants have to be initialized. Let's name it here 11. So now let us just declare this A and A dot show. Oops. Using namespaces. It's called show with no data type. Show has to have a return type. Only constructors are allowed to not have any return type. So even if you don't have any return type, you have to show, declare void here. So x is equal to 0, y is equal to 11, and y is equal to 55. So static member variables can be defined inside the class only if under some special circumstances. One of that circumstances is if it's a constant integer value, then it can be defined inside the class, just like for y. Otherwise, if I do like this, and I comment this one, okay. C++ forbids in-class initialization of non-const static member. Okay. So for const it's allowed, but for non-const static members, it has to be defined outside the class. Okay, so that's why this one I defined. So you see, the compiler passed it, but the linker, it tried to find a definition for the variable y. and it was unable to find it. Insert this variable y. It's not defined. We have to define it somewhere, and we define it here. Okay, is it clear to how to declare static member variables? Okay, so yeah, so the same question was asked by, I think, Talha. Okay. I think he removed it, but the same question was asked that what's the purpose of using static numbers? So the idea is that there is some information, some values that is unique to the class, and it should be the same value across all the objects. So such kind of values, if we create copies of this value in all the objects, then there is a chance that any object can modify that value. And also the same value that's being repeated across all the objects, so it will be like wasting space if there are lots of objects which are copying this value. So if we want to share some information across all the objects of the class, in that case we can make that variable static variable. So this variable will be accessible across all the objects. One very simple use could be that, let's say I want to keep a count of how many objects of this class have been created. So that kind of information, either I will use a global variable, or I can use a static variable which is shared across all the objects. And every time a new object is created, this variable is incremented. So where should I put this code of incrementing this object? And let's initialize count here equal to 0. And we want to know that every time this let me hold. Yes, sir. So I want to, every time I want to like an object is created, I want this count variable to be incremented. So where should I write the code to increment this count variable? Constructor, very good. So let me make a constructor. You can do all the other things, and at the same time that you do in a constructor, and you can also basically increment the count. So every time an object is created, this count will be incremented. So here I count, and then I declare A, B, 10, and static member variables, they can be accessed to any object. Okay, so let me again use A's object to display the count. So first we created one object and count was incremented to 1. Then we created an array of 10 objects again. So all of these objects, their constructor was called, and they also incremented the value count. So since this count variable, its static variable, and it's being shared across all these objects. So all these objects, they are incrementing that same particular variable in memory. Okay, so that's information. That information is shared and available to all the objects. Any object can access this count variable. Is it clear? That static variables are used to store information which we want shared across all the objects of a class. And we don't want it replicated across. Okay, to others, static variables work. Okay, so people are not responding. So I hope they are following along. Okay, good. Because if you're not, you should say no, and then I'll try to explain again. Okay, so just like we can have static member variables, so we can have static member functions. So let me just call it static. Or let's just make this show count function static. So this show count function, now it has become static, and we are accessing basically okay, let me see if it can be called using an object, because normally you will call this show count function here like this: class name colon show count. So static member variables can be called using this class name colon show count, because just like static member variables, static member functions are also not associated with any of them. Static member functions are associated with a class, and since they are not associated with the object, we can basically access them using this class name and then scope resolution operator and then the function name. But can they be accessed using an object? Let me see. Okay, they can be. Okay, good. So static member functions, they are not associated with any object, but we can access them using either an object, or if we don't have an object available, then even then we can access the static member function by using this syntax of class name, scope resolution operator, and then static function name. Whereas member functions, non-static member functions, they cannot be accessed using class name. They have to be called for an object. But static member functions, they are not associated with any object, so they can be accessed using class name colon. Okay, for example, if I do here, what's the other function? Show. If I do here a colon show, show is a non-static member function. We need an object to access it. I'm trying to call it using, so let's see. What does the compiler say? Compiler is not happy and saying cannot call member function without object. So we know what it is talking about. For member functions, we need an object. So here, there's one other thing that you guys need to keep in mind, that in non-static member functions, in normal member functions, we can access normal member variables as well as static member variables. I will repeat again. In normal functions, we can access normal member variables as well as static member variables. But in static member functions, we can access only static member variables. Static member functions are not allowed to access non-static normal member variables. Why do you think we have this restriction? The question is, the statement was that normal member functions, non-static member functions, they can access normal member variables, which means non-static member variables, as well as static member variables. So normal member functions can access both type of variables, whereas static member functions, they are only allowed to access static member variables. They cannot access normal non-static member variables. Why do you think this restriction is in place? For example, you can answer the question while I'll do this. In the static member function, I'll basically try to, x is a normal variable, okay? So I'll try to print x. This will give me an error because static member function can only access static member variables. Okay. Invalid use of member ax in static member function. So static member function is not allowed to access non-static member function variables. Not exactly scope because yes, because it doesn't make sense simply. Since static member function can be called using the class name, so it might happen that I can call this member function where no object has been yet created. Member variables, normal member variables, they are only created when objects are created. Okay, you guys, said this at the start of the class. So how can I access some variable who is not been created yet? Okay, so static member function can be called when there is no object created yet. Okay, so it won't make sense to access normal member variables because normal member variables, they are only created when an object is created. And the second confusion will be, let's say I have 3 objects created and I call this static member function by using the class name a : show count. There are 3 x variables created in 3 objects. Which of the x I am going to display? This static member function has no idea which object's x member function I am talking about. Okay? So therefore, it doesn't make sense to allow static member functions access the normal non-static member variables. Does it make sense? Okay, good, very good. So I hope others are also with us. So I think that's about the minimum that you need to know. Static member variables, static member functions. So now that you guys have an introduction, I think that's enough. Any questions so far? No? Okay, good. So if that's the case, then we'll stop static member variables here. And then let's discuss something else. When you write a program, what's the first thing that you do? When you have an idea of a program or you want to write a program, what's the first thing that you would do?
You know, if you can make it interactive, it will be nice. First thing to do when yeah, so that's what we all do, okay? But the proper way to write a program is, I mean, for simple program it works, but usually as soon as your programs get a little complicated or bigger, so you would first want to algorithm or design the program in your head. I mean, in your head, in the sense that you can't contain lots of things in your head in parallel. So what you would do is you want to design or draw your program on paper first. So you draw a design on paper, and then you discuss, you divide your program into modules. You say, okay, I'll have this module of a player, and then I would have any object, etc., etc. And then you basically try to imagine all these things and connect these things in different relationships and how they would interact with each other, etc., etc. Okay, so first we need to design the program. So design the program, you can do it paper, you can do it in your head or whatever. But we also have softwares which help design the program, or I mean structure our program. So one of these softwares that people use, I mean it's a standard which is called UML. Okay, UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. So in UML, we can design our program and before writing code. Okay, so that how this helps is that we can have a picture of our program in front of us, and then it is easy to reason about a picture with components which are drawn in front of us compared to reasoning about a program when it is in the form of text distributed across different files. Okay? We don't have all these files and what they are doing in front of us all the time. Whereas if we have a sketch of our program in the form of different modules, boxes, etc., which are connected to each other, it is easy to visualize the whole program in front of us and easy to reason about the relationships of different objects with each other and how they are going to behave. So unified modeling language is used to do this kind of designs. It models many things, okay, many kinds of processes or programs. That's why it's called unified modeling languages. What one thing that it models is this object-oriented programs. So let me, I think, show you guys. It would go better if we have something in front of us. So let me unshare this screen. Okay, so this is unified modeling language in which we can basically draw programs. If I go to this Wikipedia page, so you see it helps you draw your program like this. Okay, you can basically, that's again a very high level view, but we can have these modules of our program, and then we can see how these modules are related with each other and how do they interact with each other. So we have the sketch of our whole program in front of us, and we can basically reason about our program, and this way we can have a good overall design if we have all the program in front of us to reason about. So this is the kind of thing that UML helps you do. It's a graphical language. So let's see UML. So what UML does is that it has this thing called class diagram. So a class diagram is something that UML provides you, and let's say you have a class. You have a class, so UML lets you draw this. I think I'll go to UML. There was thing that online UML. So you can draw this UML thing. So if you guys see here, so delete this. So I have this on the right, I have this dashboard which contains different type of things that I can use to make a sketch of my program. So these particular boxes, for example, this box, this is called a class box or class diagram. So let's see, I make copy and instance here. Now I have this class. So if I have a class, I can basically draw this or sketch this class like this, and then I can give it my name that I want to do. Let's say I want to give this class. Here I can modify it. On the right, I have this panel where I can modify these things here. So I can, let's say I have a class human, and then I have some, let's say, variables. Instead of human, let me call it employee. Then I have some, so the box of the class is divided in such that on the top we have the name of the class and any high level attributes, and then we can list member variables. The second horizontal box, it contains the list of member variables, and then we can list member functions. Okay? So this way we will have a view of our class in the form of a box. So the way we list member variables is that first of all we define the whether this member variable is public, private, or protected. So for public member variables, we use this plus sign. Plus is for public, and then we give the name of the variable. Let's say, okay, somebody's mic is on. Thank you. So I can give name, let's say employee had a name, colon, and then I give its type, and then, no. So this I have a public member variable called name, and I can have a private member variable salary. Privates are declared as negative, int, and then I can have a protected member variable, let's say date of joining, DOJ, date of joining, and let's make it string. So this is how we declare member variables of a class inside a UML diagram. So you see, they have been changed here in the diagram. So this, and then we can have member functions. So again, member functions can also be public, private, etc. So let's say I make a member function, public member function called show. So here we can give arguments. So int, argument name, type, etc., etc. But my show is like nothing, is taking nothing, and here after colon I will give the return type of my function. Also a public member function. Let's say change date of joining. Change date of joining, and then we can have the new date of joining as argument. So we can have new date of joining. We call it string. It's a string. So this way we can define our function, and its return is let's say it's Boolean, just in case. Yeah. So this is it, and then if this function is virtual, then we write it in italic. Okay, so this if you see, it has been preceded and succeeded by a /. So this will make the text appear as italics. So virtual functions are represented as in italics. And this thing, responsibilities, etc., we do not need them. So this is how our class would look like. Oh, no, sorry. So this is our class employee, name, string, int, etc. We have the name of the class, and then we have the member variables, and we have member function. Let's say I want to inherit this another class, let's say manager, from the employee. So what I would do is I would make this class manager. Manager, let's say we give it a rank, a private variable called rank. And then so here we go, and then we have this. Let's say we want to put what kind of function should it have? It should have a function should. While we have this. And again, this, let's say this abstract operation has been overridden here. So it's no longer virtual, but rather a. So this manager class is here, and let's say this class we want to inherit it from this employee. So inheritance is a relationship, and this relationship can be shown here by using this arrow. This arrow is basically this straight line with this blank arrow head. This relationship is called inheritance, or in UML terms, it's also called generalization. So let's basically take this arrow. So this relationship is showing that this class manager has been inherited from the class employee. Okay? So we all know what inheritance is. So we'll immediately know that all these member variables of employee are also member variables of manager. And manager adds this new variable string, department, rank, department, etc. Okay. So this is how we can structure our program using UML. So this is one thing that is presented using UML. So this whole diagram that we are in the process of making is called class diagram. This class diagram basically tells you what are different classes in your program, and then how these classes are related to each other. So at least I think in this course, UML does a lot of other things also. So, but you should also like at least in this course, you should learn this class diagram part of the UML. Constructor destructors don't need to be mentioned because every class contains them. Yes, but you can mention them. I don't think anybody is stopping you to mention them. Basically, you want to mention information that is useful for the reader or the guy, the person who's going to look at this diagram. So just like if you have them, screen. So the certain structures, if they are trivial, you can skip them, And let's say if you want to highlight the fact that you have a copy constructor or whatever, in that case you can draw it. Protected members are. So I want to talk about some relationships. You can have different kind of relationships. One of the very useful relationship, the simplest is this inheritance relationship, generalization. Okay, what if these are an abstract? What's an abstract class? Abstract class. Hello. We have studied abstract classes. Well, that contains on at least one pure virtual function. Okay. So abstract class, as you guys can see here, is this box. So the name of the abstract class is in italics. This employee is not an abstract class, so the name of the employee is not in italics. So let's see if I move this. So I can say this abstract class human, from which employee was derived. Okay. So this is an abstract class, and the relationship between this abstract class inheritance is represented as this dotted arrow, and this relationship is called realization. Okay. Generalization and realization is inheritance from an abstract class or in. So no, I'm is presented as then this relation is not called generalization. Generalization, it is called realization. Okay, so you realize that abstract class or concrete class. So this relationship is called realization, and it is represented as this dotted arrow. Plain arrowhead, blank arrowhead with a dotted arrow. Okay, so here employee is realizing the class human. Okay, so employee class is a realization of class human. So this in Java they have another term which is called interface, which is in C++. If it, one function is in Java, they so in plus the equivalent would be a class, all whose functions are pure virtual, basically will be equivalent to Java interface. So from interfaces and abstract classes, inheritance is termed as realization. Okay, is it clear? What is realization? Hello, can you guys hear me? No, it's not virtual inheritance. Virtual inheritance is basically something different. It's inheriting from an abstract class or inheritance from an interface is called realization. So realization, realize something. It's like the English verb realize, that to make concrete. Abstract classes and interfaces, they are not concrete classes. We cannot declare objects of them, but we can inherit from them and make concrete classes out of those inherited classes. So this type of inheritance is called realization. Okay, good. So others, do you have any question about this inheritance versus realization thing? So there are two or three other relationships that we are kind of short of time. So let me share them somewhere. No, so here basically it's just a class code as well as its representation. Yes, so these underlying things, they are static variables. So static variables are represented as underlined in class diagrams. That also you will discover on your own, I think. And what should I do? The class diagram. There's a couple of relationships. Yeah. Okay, so this is basically inheritance. Checking account and saving accounts, they're inherited from the bank account. Again, same thing. Okay. So the other type of relationship that I want to associate, this relationship is not hierarchical. Okay, so this and inheritance are hierarchical relationship where one class inherits from another class, parent-child relationship. So here, association is a horizontal relationship. Okay, so basically association represents if one class uses another class. Okay? So this kind of relationship is called association. So these two classes are related because one class uses another class. So this here, if it's a bidirectional relationship, then we use a simple line. Here it's a unidirectional relationship association. That's why we have an arrow from overdrawn reports to bank account, which basically means that the overdrawn account report class, it uses the bank account class. Okay, so the overdrawn account class has knowledge about the bank account class, whereas since it's a one direction arrow, so the bank account class does not know about overdrawn accounts report class. So person, it's the relationship between flight and frequent flyer. It's a straight line. There are no arrows. Okay, so this means this is a bidirectional relationship. Okay, so the flight class uses the frequent flyer class, and the frequent catches the flight. And you can have these cardinalities that one flight can have 0 means 0 or more flights can have 0 or more frequent flyers. Okay, I'll share the links.
Okay, so any questions about association? Give me 5 more minutes. There are two associations which are important and which you guys need to know about. So I just have to tell you that because we won't have more lectures on UML. So this bidirectional association is basically if both classes know about each other and both classes basically use each other. So this is called an association relationship. There are two kinds of relationship which are important. One of them is called aggregation and the other is called composition. So here, for example, let me start with composition first. This is a composition relationship. Inheritance, I told you, inheritance means one class is part of, okay, if you want to model the GIK, take a class, and then inside the institute you will have these faculties. These faculties are part of institute. Okay, so institute has a faculty. Okay, this relationship will be modeled as either as an aggregation or a composition. Okay, has a relationship, they are aggregation or compositions. So what's the difference between aggregation and composition? The difference is the lifetime of these objects. For example, this composition, it's a strong association in the sense that a department cannot exist without a company. Okay? If this GIK Institute, God forbid, gets destroyed or dismantled or whatever, all these faculties, they exist as part of the GIK Institute, they cannot exist on their own. Okay? So the GIK Institute is composed of these faculties. So that's why it's composition relationship, which means if something happens to GIK Institute, these departments will have no life of their own, on their own. Okay, so they will get destroyed with the institute. Whereas aggregation is also has a relationship, but in the case of aggregation, the lifetime of this, it does not depend on the lifetime of a car. A car has, but it might happen that a car can get destroyed, the wheels will still survive, and they might become part of another car. Okay, so the lifetime of the object, wheel object, is not associated with the lifetime of the car object, not always. Whereas the lifetime of the department object will always be associated with the lifetime of the company object. If ever the company defaults or ends, the department objects which are part of this company object will also end. Whereas here in the case of car object, it might happen that car gets destroyed, but the wheels are still intact, and then these wheels can be assigned to another car. So aggregation is basically also has a relationship, but the lifetime of this wheel object can exceed the lifetime of the car. That is this and an arrow on the other side. So this means a car has wheels, but the lifetime of wheel does not depend on the car. Composition is a stronger relationship. Okay, it also has a relationship, but we represent it as this brown, filled rhombus. And this means that the lifetime of this department object depends on the lifetime of the company object. The company will get, the department object will get destroyed whenever its parent company object gets destroyed. Is the difference between aggregation and composition clear? Not audible.
Was I audible during this time when I was explaining composition versus aggregation? Okay. So is the difference between composition and aggregation clear? Both are associations. Both represent has a relationship, but one is more stronger than another. In composition, the lifetime of the contained object, it ends with the end of the parent object. The lifetime of the contained object may exceed the lifetime of the parent object. Okay, to others? Is it clear difference between aggregation and okay, good. So these association, they can be one-to-one, many-to-one, many-to-many, etc. Okay, so these, I mean, this numbers are called cardinality of the relationship. So as you can see here in this diagram, these numbers here, it means that a company can have one or more departments. One star means one or more departments. So again, this you can, using the representation, I mean, UML, you can present this cardinality of the relationship, that is it one-to-one relationship, one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many, etc. You can represent this cardinality. Okay. In C++, is inheritance composition or aggregation? No, inheritance is totally separate from composition or aggregation. Inheritance is the hierarchical relationship. Composition and aggregation, they are associations. Inheritance is a relationship which serves a separate purpose and is represented differently. Composition and aggregations, they are has a relationships and they are represented differently. Okay, so they are orthogonal, the concepts, inheritance as well as composition. Composition and aggregation, they are a relationship between objects of those classes. In classes, I mean, the classes also, but mainly we talk in terms of object of lifetimes. Inheritance is we basically what we have been studying, that a class inherits from another class and it basically inherits all the attributes, etc., etc. Okay, so the two concepts are different from each other and they're represented differently in UML. They serve different purposes. Okay, so how do you draw these UML diagrams? So there are different softwares that let you draw these UML diagrams. So there are many which are expensive, like Rational Rows, etc., which are big in softwares and expensive softwares. But there's this UMLect. I think it's a very small executable file which basically lets you draw UML diagrams. So the online thing that I showed you, that is also part of UMLect. It's a online version of UMLect, but you can also download UMLect as executable file and then run it on your own computer offline to make UMLect diagrams. Okay. But this is just one suggestion. You guys can search on Google and find any software that lets you draw UML diagrams, class diagrams. You can use that to draw UML diagrams. So most probably I'll release your this fifth assignment this week. That will be on polymorphism, and the next assignment, the sixth and last assignment, that will be on UML. Okay, you guys will have to draw UML diagrams of your projects. Okay, so the UML, basically the introduction ends here, and I'll send you the links. I'm afraid the rest you will have to learn on your own. There's not much. Whatever I've studied, I mean, we have studied in class today, that's about all that you need to make class diagrams of your projects. There are other type of diagrams that we will not go into in this course. You will have your own later software engineering courses where you will study more such stuff. Okay, so if you have any questions, I'm sorry I've exceeded, I think, by like 9 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can ask now. No? Okay. So thank you very much. I'll stop the recording now. You guys have a nice weekend.